All right. Well, good morning, everybody from all around the world, and afternoon, actually, I guess, if it's EST or further abroad. Thank you all for being here today with us and for participating in our month-long webinar series called Adaptation. This is a webinar series dedicated to helping you get through these challenging times by giving you the practical tools needed to not only survive, but thrive in the months ahead. And we've done this by partnering with experts in the field, such as Amy. But before I introduce her today, I just want to remind everyone about a couple of things. The first is that this session will be about an hour in length, including a 10 to 15 minute Q&A session at the end. We encourage you to ask questions in the Q&A or chat box throughout the presentation, and then we'll get to them at the end. All these sessions are recorded, and you will receive the recording along with the slide deck by usually about the end of the day or the end of the week. All right, now that we've gotten that out of the way, I'd like to introduce and extend a very warm welcome to our speaker. Today, we are pleased to have Amy Eisenstein joining us today. She is the CEO and co-founder of the Capital Campaign Toolkit, and the title of her session today is How to Engage Donors and Raise Emergency Funds During the COVID-19 Crisis. Thanks so much for joining us today, Amy. I'll let you take it from here.
Excellent. So I'm just going to share my screen, which will take just a minute here. And here we go. Excellent. All right. So we're going to talk about how to engage and outreach to donors, to how to really pick up the phone and video call with your donors during this COVID-19 crisis so that you can raise emergency funds. And I think I will shut off my video camera just so we can focus on the slides and I'm not distracting you during the presentation. And then at the Q&A, I will go ahead and turn it back on, but I seem to have lost my mouse here. Okay. All right, there we go. So let's go right and get into it. All right, first of all, before we can talk about raising money or engaging donors, we have to talk about why it's important to ask, because I'm still hearing from so many organizations that board members and executive directors are concerned that this is not an appropriate time to ask, that it's a sensitive time and people are hurting, and so it's not a good time to ask. So I want to share 5 reasons that it is a good time to ask. Also, Samantha and Mel, I just want to tell you that my chat box has disappeared while I have my presentation open. Maybe I can, you know what, I can open it back up. Never mind. It just disappeared momentarily. I was going to say, if you need me, you're going to have to interrupt me. Okay, so 5 reasons to ask. Sorry about that. Number 1 reason, you will not raise money if you don't ask. And this was true long before this crisis, and it will be true long after this crisis is over. You will not raise money if you don't ask. So you need to get out there and ask for money. Number 2, some people actually have more money now. And I think that we are in the bad habit of making assumptions about what other people have, especially if we don't have money to give, or if you're especially worried about money, then you may be worried that other people can't give. But what we're finding is that it's simply not true. You know, even with the stock market bouncing up and down, people who have been able to hold on to their jobs and have transitioned to working from home, or if you're still receiving a steady paycheck, most people are not spending nearly as much money as they do on a regular basis because they're not going to bars and restaurants, they're not going to the theater, there's no commuting expenses if you're working from home. I used to fill my gas tank weekly in my car, and now I haven't filled it in 7 weeks, which is just amazing. You know, there's no commuting costs and there's no eating out. So anyways, people have more money in their cash flow. Before I get to number 3, just in terms of more people have more money now, I want you to really remember that most people are making gifts from their cash flow, not from their assets, from stock. So it's not, you know, as much as they may be worried about the stock market going up and down and up and down, most gifts to your organizations right now are, unless you're in a capital campaign or raising, very significant gifts, it's more likely that people are making those gifts out of cash flow. Okay, number 3, people are eager to help. And so while we're all at home, not able to go out, socially distanced, people are feeling helpless. And so they're eager to help. So by giving them an opportunity to give back, to do good things, you are actually giving people a sense of purpose, a really important reason to contribute. Number 4, I'm going to go so far as to say that you are being negligent if you don't ask. I truly believe that if you're not out raising money right now, you are harming your organization, you're harming your community, you're harming your clients and the future of your organization. And so if you have a board member or an executive director who doesn't want you out fundraising right now, I would go so far as to say that you're being negligent, and tell them that they're harming the organization and they're harming the future of the organization. And finally, the last reason to ask is your nonprofit needs funding right now. Nothing more to say about that, right? Okay, so the first step, of course, in going out to get money is developing your case for support. It may be very similar to what your case for support always is, and it may be a little bit different now if you're fundraising for emergency funds or because you've lost revenue due to COVID-19. So you want to answer the basic questions: who do you serve? What has changed? Have your programs and services changed? Are you open? Are you closed? Have you seen a surge in the need for the service that you provide? If you're on the front lines or if you're serving food, or you may have seen a real surge in the need for your services. Talking about what you need specifically. What is your plan for the future? If you're closed, how will you open? How will your programs and services change? And why now? So before you can start engaging with donors or asking for money, you should have really articulate ways of communicating these needs. Okay. So here's what we're going to do over the next, 30, 35 minutes or so, and then we'll get to questions. We're going to talk about how to identify donors, who you should be engaging, and how you should be calling them up. Number 2, how to call and video chat with your donors. And number 3, how to ask for gifts. Okay. So first step is you are going to be working from the inside out. So you're going to start with those who are closest to your organization, your board members, your staff members, your clients. Next is your current donors, your largest and loyal donors. Oh, I started with clients. They're in the center of your circle. At some organizations, it's appropriate to be asking these people for donations. A few examples would be hospital patients. Those people might be able to be turned into great donors. Performing arts centers, certainly your clients would be potentially great donors. So if you're looking at clients as prospective donors and thinking, what is she talking about? If your organization serves homeless people, they're probably not good prospective donors. So it depends, of course, who your client base is. But anyways, so we want to start with your donors that are closest to the center of your organization. Those are your largest and your loyal donors, your volunteers. And then as you move out to the outer rings of the circle, community members are probably, your farthest out potential donors. So you start with the inside, the people closest to your organization, and work your way out. So, my thought is that right now, every single organization should be calling all of their donors and supporters. That's what your staff, your development staff, your fundraising staff, your board members, your executive director, right now, you should be using this time to be engaging your donors. You know, certainly you're probably engaging them on social media and with emails and with bulk solicitations. You're probably, hopefully you're fundraising from them online and through bulk mail, traditional mail. But I want you really to personalize it and take it to the next step and think about calling campaigns. Now, maybe you're calling donors to say thank you and to check in on them, which is wonderful and important and critical. And now it's time to take it to the next step and make sure that you're calling people and you're also asking those people for money in a one-on-one personal way. And so you want to think, I like to think about two groups of people. Of course, after you've segmented your donors. So, you know, in the last slide, thinking about, you know, your most loyal donors, printing a list of your largest donors, who are the top 10 or 20 or 30 donors who gave the largest gifts to you last year. Then another report would be your most loyal donors, who has given for the last 3 years or more, or the last 5 years. Anybody who's a monthly donor, of course, you would want to generate a report for your monthly or recurring donors, and also your most recent donors. So looking at all sorts of different lists. And then we're going to think about who on these lists do you know, do you have existing relationships with, and who don't you know, who are strangers. And so I like to separate my lists into people that I already have a relationship with and those that I don't. Now, the good news is that none of these people that you're calling are cold calls, because cold calls are people who don't have any relationship with your organization. But everybody that I just talked about has made a gift to your organization. They're current or existing donors or board members or volunteers. And so you may not have relationships with them, you may not really know them, but they are not cold calls. They've all given to your organization. So I like to think about those two groups differently. So those, you know, video, right? It's a little rhymey to remind you, but if you have an existing relationship with people, I would try and video chat with them. It's really nice to be able to see them, to be able to share things on screen, to show them things, but really connecting with that video chat. It's probably a little bit harder to schedule calls for people that you don't know. So I like to think of those as more my impromptu phone calls, just trying my luck and picking up the phone and see if I get through to them. But let's start with talking about those you know that you might be reaching out to via trying to connect over video chat. So first is sending an email requesting time, right? If, you know, video chat is not something that we're probably going to do in an impromptu way in any time in the near future. It's not like just picking up the phone. And so I would send an email requesting a time and then ask how they like to video chat. So if I have an older donor who already FaceTimes with their kids and grandkids, I don't need to teach them Zoom. I don't need to force them to download it. I don't need to complicate the situation. I'm going to use the technology that they already know and feel comfortable with. Now, that being said, I'm pretty sure in the last 6 or 8 weeks, everybody, it seems like everybody on the planet knows how to Zoom. Even my 70-year-old parents, all their classes and all their book clubs and all their everything turned to Zoom. And so if my 75-year-old parents can learn how to Zoom, I'm sure your donors are probably all Zooming as well now, but I like to find out what kind of technology they're most comfortable with and try and use that. And then, of course, you're going to schedule the meeting. You know, prepare slides and visuals. If you do have an advantage of using a video chat technology, then instead of just staring at each other, you may want to share things on the screen. So you can prepare photographs pictures or drawings, testimonials. You can have some statistics, or even a short video. And so what I would recommend though is that each slide, you know, and don't have more than 3 or 4. It's not the whole meeting. We'll get to what the content of the chat is, of the time that you spend on video chat, but only a very, very short segment of time is going to actually be talking about your organization. So maybe you'll have 3, 4 slides at the absolute most, and none of them should have more text on the slide than this current slide has now. It's not that they're reading it, it's just that you're giving yourself prompts to remind you and to share with them things that you want to talk about. So you might say, you know, serving, you know, 25% more people right now, or, you know, you could have statistics like that, but photographs or even a 30-second or 1-minute video would be great to share. And then before you call, you want to prepare your bullet points, right? So what do you want to cover? What do you want to make sure that you say? What do you want to make sure that you ask them? Know what you're going to say in advance and how you're going to ask. So we're going to go into that right now. Okay, but I do want to hold for 1 second and take a question from the chat box. Ellen is asking, our agency is partway through a capital campaign. Should we hold off on asking for large pledges at this time? And Ellen, I think you are going to have to determine that on a donor by donor basis. And you are going to ask, you know, ask permission to ask. I'll say that in just a few minutes. We'll talk about what I mean by ask permission to ask, but you should be communicating with all of your donors, especially capital campaign donors, and ask them if now is a good time to talk about the campaign and what your needs are. One of my hats that I wear is the co-founder of the Capital Campaign Toolkit. And what we're recommending is that our clients are talking to their top 20 campaign donors and prospective donors about how and when they should proceed with the campaign. And many of them are moving ahead. They've gotten the thumbs up from their donors that they want to continue with the project as planned. Others of them are extending the timeline slightly, but I think that, you know, you can ask now, even if people maybe take an extended pledge period. So maybe you were going to have a 3-year pledge period, but now for some people, for extra large gifts, they're hoping to extend their pledge payments out over 5 years with the hope that the market does a little bit better. So there are lots of different things that you could do, but I don't think you should be halting your campaign, but you should be checking in with your donors on that. All right, so let's go back to my slides here, and we're going to talk about how your video ask is going to go, your video ask agenda. So first of all, when you've scheduled the call, you're on video chat now with your donor, and first things, of course, you're going to check in and catch up, find out how they're doing, if they or anybody in their family has been sick, or if they know anybody who's been sick. You know, this is something universal that we're all talking about right now. So there's no way you're going to plunge into a conversation without checking in with people. You're going to find out if they've transitioned to working from home, if they are continuing to work, how their business is going. That's going to indicate to you, this check-in, whether it's an appropriate or good time to ask. If they seem to be stable, they're doing well, all things considered in this environment. If they're working, if things are stable, then you can proceed. Number 2 is ask questions and listen carefully. You know that fundraising is all about building relationships. So we want to make sure that we really specifically have in here on our agenda a time for you to ask questions and listen. We don't want you launching right into a presentation or talking, just having a monologue about your organization. You want to be asking questions and listening carefully. And on the next slide, I'm going to give you lots of examples of what types of questions you can ask. Number 3 is share an update about your organization. This is your opportunity to catch your donor up on what's going on at your nonprofit organization, your charity. So let them know. Are your doors open? Are your doors closed? How are you continuing to serve your clients? Have you changed your programs and services to remote? How has this impacted your cause? What's going on with your clients right now? So give them an update about what's happening and what's going on and what your needs are. Well, here's where we're going to ask permission to ask. So this is where you're really going to talk about potentially what your needs are. So we want to transition and ask permission to ask. So I might say something like, would it be okay if I shared some of our greatest needs at our organization right now? Would you be interested in learning more about ways that you can help? So lots of ways to ask permission to ask and transition. And then once you ask, of course, you're going to thank and confirm. So that's sort of my agenda for a video call. All right, so at the beginning of that call, towards the beginning, I said ask questions and listen. So we're going to start with things like, how are you and your family doing? Are you able to work from home? And how is that going, right? So there's a difference between open questions and closed questions. A closed question has a yes or a no answer. So the second one on my list here, are you able to work from home, is actually a closed question. The answer is yes or no. But you add on to it, and how's that going? And that opens up the question, the conversation, so that it really draws a longer answer from the person that you're speaking to. So the next one, why did you give in the first place? Or can you tell me a little bit about why you give to our organization, right? Why do you continue to give? What interests you most about our organization? So of course, you're not going to ask all 3 of those questions. You're going to ask one of them, the one that seems most applicable, right? What got you interested in our organization in the first place? And why, why are you still interested in it? Or what do you love most about our organization? Or what about our mission is attractive to you as a person, What changes have you observed in the community? What's going on due to COVID-19? What are you seeing? What are you hearing? Have your philanthropic interests changed at all due to COVID-19, right? Everybody's worried that people are only giving to healthcare or to homeless shelters or to food banks and soup kitchens. But it's simply not true. While people have started giving to those organizations, I truly believe that donors continue to be interested in and care about and supportive of organizations that they've always cared about and supported. And that's really what we're finding. And then of course, how might you like to help? I mean, maybe that's not the most, don't take that question literally, because people will say, I don't know. So you're going to have some ideas there about how they can help. But, would you like to learn more about ways that you can help? And then you can talk about how they'd like to help and how they're helping. All right, so let's talk about strangers and what you might say on the phone to them, how you might, these are more impromptu calls. These are not people that you have a relationship with. So I'm just going to pick up the phone and try and see if I can get lucky and reach them and get through to them. And I have to tell you that with everybody home these days, so many more people working from home and so many people sheltering in place, I've seen so much more, the rates of getting through to donors have increased so much. You know, it used to be that I could call 20 people and only get one on the phone. But now if I call 20 people, I'm talking to, you know, 6 or 8 of them. And it turns out that people who are willing to talk and wanting to talk really do want to talk, you know, because they're lonely, they're at home, they're bored, they're anxious. And so when you do get a donor on the phone, plan to be on the phone with them for 10, 20, 40 minutes. I'm having development directors report to me that they're on the phone with donors for like 40, 20, 30, 40 minutes. So of course, you're going to introduce yourself, right? This is not somebody that you have a relationship with. So you are going to say, hi, my name is Amy. I'm calling from XYZ organization. And in the introduction, you're probably going to say why you're calling too. So I'm calling all of our supporters to check in and find out how they're doing, right? I'm calling you because you've been a supporter of our organization. So then if they're willing to talk, of course, you're going to ask how they're doing, just as we went over already. Same thing, ask questions and listen carefully, share an update about your organization, and then ask permission to ask. So really the same kind of agenda, except for that this is an impromptu call as opposed to what we did before, which was planned. So you are still going to get a lot of machines and leave a lot of messages. So I just wanted to give you some language because not everybody's comfortable or experienced talking on the phone or calling up their donors. So here's some sample language. And yes, we will be sharing the slides. So you don't have to worry that you have to frantically write this down. We'll be sending out the slides shortly after the presentation. So hello, my name is Amy and I'm calling from the local soup kitchen. We're calling all of our supporters and we are thankful to count you among them. I'm calling to see how you're doing during this time. I'm sorry we weren't able to connect, but I will reach out to you again soon. If you'd like to call me back, I can be reached at my cell and leave your number. And I'm looking forward to speaking with you soon. So you do want to leave a message. Don't hang up. They know your call, that you called. They may even be screening the call. And so you do want to leave a lovely and pleasant message. And so you can even say, I'll try you again tomorrow, or I'll try you again next week if I haven't heard back from you. All right, so let's say somebody picks up the phone. So hello, this is Amy. I'm the development director from the local soup kitchen, XYZ organization, wherever you're calling from. We are calling our supporters and thankful to count you among them. Do you have a few minutes to talk? Right? And if they say no, say if now's not a good time, when would be? Could I call you back later today? And I wanted to reach out to say hello and see how you and your family are doing during this time. I also wanted to thank you for your years of support or your recent support. So either you're going to reschedule or you're going to launch into your topic of conversation. Okay, so now I had talked a little bit about transitioning to an ask. I just want to go into a teeny tiny bit more detail because I think that most development directors and executive directors and even board members who are willing to make phone calls are probably fairly comfortable at the chit chat part, at the checking in part, at the thanking and cultivating people part, even sharing about their organization. But what I think is really tricky sometimes if you're not experienced with it, of course, is transitioning to an ask. So you want to make sure that you're doing this for most of the people you're calling. You know, if you get somebody who tells you that they're out of work or that, you know, that they've been fired or let go or that their business is doing really badly, then you're not going to transition to an ask. You're just going to tell them how grateful you are that they've been a donor in the past. You're calling to check in and give them an update about the organization. And, you know, you might even ask, is there anything we can do for you during this difficult time? You know, it's very unlikely that they're going to ask you for something that you can't do for them. Most people just want somebody to commiserate with and to be a good listener. I've heard of people asking for people to say a prayer for them or with them, or, you know, to think of them if they hear of any jobs, you know, nothing that's going to be out of the realm of possibility for you to actually help them with. And so it's, you know, if you can, it's a really lovely thing to be able to say, you know, can we support you? Is there anything you need during this difficult time? And, you know, we just want, when you're back on your feet, we look forward to seeing you back as a donor when you can, right? You've been such a wonderful supporter in the past. All right, so you are going to ask permission to ask if it's appropriate. We want to say, would it be okay if I shared some of the biggest needs right now at our organization? Or would you be interested would you be interested in learning about ways you can help, right? So ask permission to ask. All right. Okay, so I'm just peeking in the chat box for 1 second, and I see that Marissa is asking, what is your recommendation for a new manager at a university who believes we should all be halting our fundraising at this time and not reaching out to our alumni? You know, Marissa, it's really hard when the boss thinks that you shouldn't be fundraising, but unfortunately, I am hearing that so frequently. You know, one of the things that you could do would be to tell them that you sat in on this webinar and share the recording with them and say that, you know, one of the experts that you heard in the field is really stressing that it's critical that you be reaching out to your donors and communicating this during this time. You know, at a minimum, checking in on them and cultivating them, even if you're not getting to an ask, which I think is a huge mistake, but it's better than nothing. You know, not reaching out at all is really detrimental. And, you know, it's hard to tell your boss that they're being neglectful by not reaching out, but you could certainly share this recording and I could tell them that they're being neglectful for not fundraising right now. So it's definitely tough, but I think that there's enough data coming out of the donor database companies that are showing that the organizations that are asking are doing tremendously well right now. And you might want to point them back to some articles and data from the last recession, at least here in the US, during 2007 and 2008, and the organizations that continued to raise money, continued to work their plan, continued with their fundraising, raised more than they expected to, and did significantly better. The organizations that stopped their fundraising, that fired their development staff, they were in real trouble for years to come. And so hopefully that will inspire them to get back to the business at hand. So I want you to be prepared to answer questions when you're calling your donors. How can I help? If your donor says, how can I help, or what do you need? You should have a really succinct, well-crafted, well thought out answer. Too often, development directors are not prepared for these questions, and donors are eager to help. They want to know what you need. And so you want to be able to say the number one thing that we need right now is financial support. That way the organization can pivot and do exactly what we need for our clients and our programs and services. We can ensure that our staff is continued to be paid. We can pay our light bills and make sure that we are providing the best programs and services possible for our donors. And so let's go into what you're asking for. There's lots of things that you can ask for. Number one is major gifts. So those really are for, requests for people who already have given major gifts or who are longtime supporters, loyal donors to your organization. And I truly, truly believe that you can raise major gifts in this remote and virtual environment. I have to tell you that for the past 10 years, I have been teaching and talking about raising major gifts. And until 3 months ago, I would have told you that absolutely 100% the best way to raise major gifts is in person and face-to-face. And I have to tell you that I have seen so many people raise 6- and 7-figure gifts virtually over video chat and remotely, even on the phone. It's effective, it's efficient, that I am never going back to saying that in person is the only way. In fact, I mean, it's so much more efficient. A major gift officer can talk to 5 or 6 or 7 donors a day, as opposed to visiting them on the road, 1 or 2 visits a day. And so I'm not saying that we'll never go back to face-to-face fundraising. I think for sure in person in people's living rooms is always been effective. We will get back to that, but I'm never going to say it's the only way again. I'm going to encourage people to continue to develop those relationships remotely. All right. The next thing that you'll be asking people, if it's not a major gift prospect, if it's not someone who's made significant contributions or doesn't necessarily have significant capacity, you want to ask for a monthly or a recurring gift. So any of your donors, you can say, the number one way to help right now is to support us in the coming weeks and months is to make, and years ahead, is to make a recurring gift. So I'm hoping that you will consider a monthly gift at $50 a month. Or, if you're talking to somebody who's given $100 a year for the last 3 years or 5 years, you can say, you could really support us right now by making a gift, a monthly gift of $25 a month or $20 a month. If you get somebody who's giving $100 annually to give you $20 monthly, you've more than doubled their gift. Think about that. If they're not interested in a recurring gift or a monthly gift, of course, you're going to ask for a one-time gift. I put in-kind items on here, but I have to say I'm not a huge fan of in-kind items. Sometimes they're really useful. Sometimes they're more hassle than they're worth. But what I don't want you to do is ask for them first. I think sometimes when people who are out fundraising get really nervous about asking for money, it's sort of a cop-out or an easy thing to say, well, if you could just donate some canned goods or some diapers. Well, even if your organization needs diapers or canned goods, would you really rather have money or would you really rather have canned goods and diapers? And you should have language at the ready to be able to say, listen, of course, while we do distribute diapers from our site and groceries, we can buy them in bulk and much cheaper than you can at the store. And then we're sure to have exactly what our clients need, instead of having, to store diapers that are the wrong size or the wrong age or, the wrong kind of food or whatever it is, and sorting through all that. What would really help us right now in our time of need is instead of sending a gift card, sometimes I'll see organizations, they ask for groceries or gift cards. You know what, if you're going to go out and spend, $25 to get a gift card from the local supermarket, just give that cash right to the organization so they can use it as they see fit or as they need. Finally, you want to ask for referrals to others. So if you've got someone on the phone, you can say, listen, we'd love it if you could connect us with someone else who might be interested in learning more about our work. So grow your lists that way. All right, so in just a minute, we're going to get to the Q&A portion. So I thought, you know, I'd like to invite you to submit your questions now in the Q&A box if you have a question you want me to answer in just a minute. This is one of my last slides. I will just remind you to keep fundraising. I do not want you to make assumptions about what your donors will do or won't do or can do or can't do. You are going to really do yourself harm. You're going to shoot yourself in the foot if you do that, because you're going to assume that your donors can't do things or won't do things. Listen, you won't know until you ask, and that's critical. And so you want to ask what they would like to do, how they might like to help, what they can do. And instead of assuming that donors won't give or that they can't give, I'm going to assume that they can and that they will until I've asked them and until I learn that they can't. So let me end there. So we'll get to questions in just a minute. I just wanted to invite you all to join me. Every single week I'm doing 2 free town hall sessions through the crisis. For as long as the crisis lasts, I'm going to do 2 weekly free calls for fundraisers. Every Monday at 2 o'clock, we're talking about capital campaigns at capitalcampaigntoolkit.com/townhall. And on Mondays at 3 o'clock, oh, these are both Eastern time. I'm in New Jersey. So on general fundraising at amyeisenstein.com/townhall. So if you want to hear more from me or every week, feel free. Yes. Oh, can you put clickable links in the chat? Yes, I will try and do that while we're answering questions. So, okay. So questions. Samantha, do you want to tell me which questions you want me to answer? Do you want me to just read them? How do you want to manage these?
Absolutely, I can read the questions for you.
Great.
So we've got one from Marissa. What is your recommendation for a new manager at a university who believes we should be halting all fundraising at this time and not reaching out to our alumni?
Oh, you know what? I did tackle that one before. That's all right. I did. I did read that one in the middle. So we have covered that already. So let's go to another one.
Great. We'll jump into Deborah's question then.
Okay.
Would you recommend calling all donors, even if the gift is as small as $100 a year? Would you recommend reaching out to new donors at this time as well? Donors that have never donated to us before, just to clarify.
So, okay, I would absolutely call your $100 donors for sure. I would invite them to join your monthly giving club at $20 a month or $25 a month. And then of course go down to 15 or even as low as 10 if that feels most comfortable for them, but start with $20 or $25 a month. For sure, I would be calling my $100 donors. I mean, if they're annual donors, always tell people, you don't know if they only give $100 a year because you've never asked them for more. You know, unless you can say with confidence that you've asked them for more, then maybe they're only giving $100 a year because you've never asked them for more. So you don't know what their capacity is potentially. So reaching out to new donors is definitely trickier. I think the way you're probably going to get most of your new donors right now is through online efforts, through social media, through having your friends and supporters share your links and having people join that way. I don't know necessarily who you're going to be calling unless, let me put a big unless they're your loyal volunteers, then definitely call them. So if they're supporters or volunteers, definitely call them and ask them for contributions.
Great. We can jump into the next question then from Amy. Hi, I know you mentioned to keep asking individuals. However, what is your stance on businesses, especially small businesses?
I think that it doesn't hurt to ask, right? There are certain small businesses that are doing extremely well right now. What are some examples? I don't know. Pizza places in the US are doing extremely well right now. Everybody's getting takeout and delivery. And, you know, I can't say this for every single pizzeria, but pizza places business is booming. So, you know, I think, again, I'll go back to, you don't want to make assumptions about what's happening or who's doing well or who's doing not. You don't know what kind of online business they're doing. Certain businesses are doing very well. Other businesses obviously are hurting. And so I think what's important is to ask and to communicate and talk to people and find out how they're doing, and then see if they want to support. You should not make the decision for them. Let them make the decision on their own.
Great, thank you. We'll jump into a question from Heather. If you call and need to leave a voicemail, then follow up with an email letting them know you called and asking for a date, time, etc. of communication. They can connect later. If they don't reply in, say, a month, do you try that process again in the next month?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, so I think you should try different ways. So if I called and left a message and I didn't hear back from them in a day or two, I would send them an email if you have access to their email address. And so, so then I might call back one more time a week later. I would not wait a month. I would do, so maybe 3 contacts within a week or 10 days. And then you would wait a few months. Then I would, at that point, if I hadn't heard back from them and I've reached out by email and by phone twice, I might send them something in the letter, you know, in the post, a real handwritten note. And then I would find out if other people at my organization knew the person. Maybe even do that first, honestly. See if there's another contact who would have better success. So your executive director or your board members or even other staff or volunteers who might know the person. I would scour social media, especially LinkedIn, for connections to see who I'm connected with that's connected with this person I'm trying to reach out to. But then, you know, you might take a 3 or 4 month break or 6 month break and then reach back out.
Thank you for answering that. We've got one more question from Jennifer. How would you facilitate monthly giving over the phone?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there's a couple of ways you could do it. You could ask them with you on the phone to go to your website and enter their credit card information themselves. You could also do it yourself. You could say, if you feel comfortable giving me your credit card number, I could enter it on our website. What you don't want to do, and I should have said this before, is you have to have the technology to run a monthly giving program. So you have to have the it set up on your website so that credit card information is kept confidentially. You don't want to be manually entering it every month, and you should not be holding on to people's credit card information. So ideally, I would have them open up the website, say, would it be okay while we're on the phone if you go ahead and open up your website? I will wait and walk you through it in case you have any issues. And I would love to, you know, have you do that right now so that we can both move on with our day and you can feel good that you're helping these, you know, the women and children or, you know, whoever your clients are. And I can feel wonderful knowing that you've helped on the spot or, you know, whatever it is. But I would ask them to open it up and do it right there, or you can offer to take their credit card and you just enter it on your website.
Thanks, Amy. We've got another question from Heather that's come in. Do you ever do you recommend, if you don't receive a reply by phone or email or written letter, and then someone you do both know can't make a connection, is it appropriate to reach out on social media instead?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, I don't feel strongly about it. I think, you know, probably, everybody's different. And so if they're very active on social media and they're always posting and they're always sharing, then they're probably going to be more comfortable with that kind of communication. If you find someone and there's not much in their feed, I don't think that's a good way to reach out. I would think that they might feel that that's a real infringement on their personal space. And so I think it's a person by person judgment call on your part. Very stereotypically, I would say the younger people are, the more likely it is that they'll respond favorably on social media, and the older people are maybe less so. But I would also gauge it based on how active they seem to be on social media. If it's a medium they're very comfortable with, then it's probably okay.
That's a great point. Thank you. We have another question coming in from Jan. What are the most effective ways a board member can help support a capital campaign?
Oh, well, we love our board members to be involved in a capital campaign, and there's a wide range of ways that they can help. So some of your very active, supportive board members will want to be on a campaign committee. If they're willing and able and wanting to ask for gifts, then of course we want board members to do that. But I should back up. The first way that we need all board members to participate in a campaign is, first of all, be supportive of the idea and be enthusiastic and excited about the idea of the campaign and what it's going to accomplish. The next thing is that board members need to each make their own significant and meaningful contributions to the campaign. And that's going to range widely based on what their financial resources are. So some people will be able to give a very large gift, and others will be able to give much smaller gifts. But as long as it's still significant and meaningful for that particular donor board member's budget, then they should do that. I'm a firm believer that every board member should help in some way with fundraising. For some people, that means writing thank you notes or making thank you calls. Other people can help with asking, but not everybody needs to. And it's the same for a capital campaign. Some board members will be much more active than others, but everybody should be engaged in some way. And the first two things they need to do is support the campaign really enthusiastically, by voting in favor of it and getting on board, literally and figuratively, and then by making their own gift. Those are the first things.
I think that's an excellent segue into a question that's just come in from Deborah, and you've slightly answered it already, but we are a very small nonprofit, so we all wear many hats. I'm sure a lot of people can resonate with that. Would it be okay for someone besides the executive director to call donors?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Yes, lots of people should be calling donors. Donors love to hear from board members, and so you want to be careful that your board members have really good, not so much scripts, but bullet points that you can practice and rehearse with them so they know what to say, and that they're not answering any questions that they don't know the answer to. They're referring people either back to your website or to you for answers. But I would love for program staff and for board members and for others to help with the donor calling for sure, as long as you have a good script and you're all on the same page.
Great. Well, I think that is all of the questions, unless anyone has a last minute one they'd like to pop into the chat. Otherwise, I'm just going to share my screen with the follow-up for the next webinar. So thank you so much, Amy. That was really, really informative. So I think that it concludes the session for today. Again, unless anyone does have a last minute question they want to sneak in. So just before we sign off here, I wanted to remind you that our next session will be Wednesday, May 20th at 11 a.m. PST or 2 p.m. EST. This session will be led by the co-founder of 48 and 48 and Sideways 8, where he'll be presenting his session titled How Nonprofits Can Stretch Their Marketing Budget. His name is Adam Walker. If you haven't already signed up for that, we posted the link in the comment section to sign up. Otherwise, thank you all so much again and see you next week. Amy, if you'd like to say any last words.
Oh, just thanks so much for joining me. I appreciate it.
All right, well, have a great day, everybody.